Sure. I mean, just to add on to that, I think we're actually in quite a privileged position in a way, like as translators of the Danes. First of all, because he's here, and we have access to him when going through the translation and making sure he approves of our translation, and also because actually I think one important point is also that we are Singaporean. And his poetry does concern a lot of things. I mean, sort of scapes in Singapore. That the atmosphere of Singapore, and this is something which I could relate to, and actually was what drew me to the project as well. And so because we have this shared experience, I felt that I was, that's a plus side for me as a translator, and that that's something I relate to as well. And so. Something I can try and convey in the translation. And actually, I mean, well, when I told people that this project which I'm working on, everyone would say, well, is it possible? And I said, of course it's possible. There's absolutely no perfect translation in the world, but that's not to say that you can't try your best or try and approach perfection as far as possible. And that, as Mr. Yeng was saying, he has enjoyed many pieces of literature only through translation. The same goes for myself. I mean, some of my favorite writing I have only ever read in translation. Like my favorite novelist is Murakami, and I can't read Japanese, so I've only ever read translations of him. And yet I feel like I can identify with the spirit of his work each time. And one of the great poems in English by Keats is about a sonnet where he talks about first looking into Chapman's Homer, and he's actually in praise of the translator for letting him ever read Homer because he can't read the original, and that it was really like seeing a whole universe opening up to him. And I think so. It's really, I mean, we can never approach it. We can never have a perfect translation, but it is still necessary to have translations because that's how we can communicate across language barriers, across cultural barriers, and that's how we learn more about ourselves across these barriers. So yeah, I think it was, even though by no means is this a perfect translation, I thought it was a really valuable experience for myself. And it was, I think we have
快翻译一下。我帮你快翻译一下。好像是说他当他接这个工作的时候，有人问他是不是可能他有没有本事做到啊？可是他愿意尝试，因为主要的原因是他看到彼岸的诗呢，也写一些新加坡人的共同关注的问题。因为我们三个都是新加坡人嘛，所以他能够认同他诗，他觉得他能够进入他的诗所描写的问题、社会情景来做这个工作，他愿意尝试。他觉得翻译当然是不完美，但是是重要的，是必须的。他也顺带提到一个关于英国诗人的作品被翻译成另外一种语言，是吧？
不是 Homer， 就是
就是我
希腊的，
希腊
是一个英国人看了这个翻译，然后他就就是 Homer 的 Iliad， 他看到了，他就觉得这好像是一个新的领域给他。
OK， 他是讲那个祭词，英国诗人祭词，看到那个伊里亚特啊，他感觉一个好像全新的视野，就是展开了一个新的视野哦，就说受各种作品好的作品的感应，那种刺激啦，这种心智刺激也是很重要的，所以他是觉得一些作品他愿意担任这个工作，就这样子。
Okay, it's getting a bit late, so maybe we'll just take one last question before we then break up, and I'll introduce you to the set of poems that Mr. Yeng that has been translated. Because I think in this body of poems you will find a whole series. You will find his life actually lit up. If you read it, in that sense, yeah. So maybe one last question before we carry on. Okay, two then. Yes, I went up there. Okay, two questions. Yes, the young man in front. Oh, the old man behind first.
我发觉我看你的作品，诗歌有不小的成就，小说也有不小的成就。在下来的年月，你更希望自己更多的是一个诗人，还是更多的是一个小说家？
He finds that Mr. Yeng's
poems as well as novels are very interesting. So it just wonders what will he write more of in the future. 隆中都有了。
从大概是2000年开始吧，我就开始写小说，长篇小说。那所以现在你们看到我的都是长篇小说的成就。我大概每4年啊3、4年就出一本长篇小说。我下来还是有一个脑里面还是有一些题材要写的是长篇小说，所以你看我就把我的诗荒废了。我是很想写，但是想的都是小说的东西。而我自己是这样想的，我觉得世界上任何一个地方，文坛，我们讲它的文坛主要是小说，长篇小说。当我们讲作家的时候，就是写长篇小说的作家。而我们新加坡很不幸的就是缺乏长篇小说。华文我说华文，英文我不知道。
英文更加
缺乏长篇小说，所以我愿意就试一下把心都用在这边，而且我不断的鼓励我那些写作的朋友，我说写长篇小说，我说每个人至少都可以写一本出来的。我都叫他们写长篇小说。我说因为我们的文坛真的是，别人也有时候一些问题，新加坡有文坛吗？这样的意思是说我们之前没有长篇小说长篇小说，你去看看全世界，当我们讲那些名作家，都是长篇小说的作家，我们叫做 novel， 在中文译成小说。我们这边只有 short story writer， 或者是跟那种微型小说，很少长篇小说。
Since 2000, he concentrated on writing novels because from his observation, look at any part of the world, you talk about famous writers, you think of novelists, and in Singapore, sad to say, there are hardly any substantive body of work in novel writing. So he himself had made an effort almost every 3 to 4 years to produce one novel. And right now there's enough in his mind to have another one. And he even encourages his writer friends, do at least one novel per person. Because others laugh at us and say, what literary world do you have here? Meaning, there are no good novelists here. So this, I guess to answer the question is he'll probably write more novels than poetry.
我还要加上一样是，以前我是写很多杂文就是说一些抨击社会的杂文，当然这个也是很有意义，但是随着时间过去，人家也忘记了。杂文人家一字记的只有鲁迅一个人，因为他的文字很好。那么人家要研究当时那个时代，就看鲁迅的杂文。那么我觉得，我就把我以前写杂文的那种东西，如果关注社会的话，我就把一些社会的东西我们应该关注的写在我的小说里。
He used to write essays too, so but he thinks people will forget what essays do, except for famous one like Lu Xun. Everyone will still remember what he wrote because of his powerful use of language. In his case, he says, rather than write essays, he will use those ideas or topics inside his novels. So that's how he incorporates them.
Yes.
Just now you mentioned about the decline in Chinese readers, especially in your bookshop. I am a product of the 80s system. Probably I have very little exposure to Chinese. Maybe just one textbook. So, how do I get into Chinese literature and increase my appreciation of the Chinese language? Are there authors or works that I can get started with?
他很现实的问题啊，他就是80年代的产品。他说他根本不大懂中文，说如果他要开始看中文书，他应该向哪一位作家有什么作品着手？And have a one-on-one.
Let's talk about Chinese literature. Frankly speaking, some of the books you can't even find in Taiwan. They are out of print already. You can't even find good Chinese literature, certain literature in Taiwan. They were originally written, but they are stocked in
So
it's
visit
very,
grassroots.
it's very rare. But it's very
visit
important, I would say, in the social.
點解我嚟？
我们是在卖好的文学的书和好的文史哲的书。好的就是说文学的，还有好的中国哲学、历史还有翻译的把西洋的东西翻译成中文的书。我们的就是说中文作者里面有好的作者。中文作者，就不管台湾、香港、大陆，我们几乎都要收这些作者，都有在那边，但是很少。
Okay,
就是除了。
快点，快。Okay, I'll just translate for you. We say that we have the final selection of books, literature, in literature, philosophy, history, coming from published in Hong Kong, China, Taiwan. And the reason I want to add to it is that he has been reading good books his whole life. So his recommendations cannot go wrong.
Okay, so maybe I'll just introduce to you that this is probably Pei An's first translation, English translation of his poems. Right? He has had his novels translated, but these are the first English translations of poetry. We have decided to break it up into 5 chapbooks, 5 separate books. The reason being that each book talks about a different phase of his life. This is the angry phase, where the poet was a rebellious man, young man, right? So we call it Rebellion, poems 1. The second phase is when he becomes, after he starts fighting and scolding with people, he had some personal notes, that he thought he had a personal thinking about what writers should do or should be, had thoughts about society and so on. And then, so you get another phase, right? The third phase, of course, is that he decided he should go into self-exile. That's why you don't see the face there. right? And so these are poems on that he wrote when he was in self-exile. And then after that, he decided, no, I got to come back out, So he resurgence. We call it resurgence. He comes out again, green, you see, growing up again, coming out, right? And finally, of course, there's something called other thoughts. These are his other thoughts.
Golden years.
It's golden years. Not really yeah, but okay, golden years, right? So this really actually is a very quick snapshot of the poems that's written across his life. And we have all packaged it into one very nice little gift pack here that you all can buy. And yeah, I think, I don't want to be too pushy about it, but you buy it here, it's cheaper than you buy in Zhoukan. But you should still go to Zhoukan to enjoy the literature there, because it really is a fascinating bookshop, right? Okay, right. So, okay, I think we at this stage, I want to just thank you again for coming and spending time with us here today, and to thank the national. Sorry. I have some refreshments and tea. I want to thank the National Library too for allowing us to use this space and for initiating this thing for the community, right? So just feel free to mingle around and buy books, eat, buy books, eat, buy books, read. Okay, thank you. And just